I want you guys to try and guess what song I'm dancing to. Anyway, welcome guys to yet another episode of Faith Helps Podcast. And as you guys will notice, I'm a little bit under the weather. I'm a little bit under the weather today. This is take 365 because I keep trying to do it without having to clear my throat or cough. And I decided, you know what? It is what it is. And there's still some fruitfulness I can offer and showing up as I am. And the fruitfulness that this gem that I'm going to offer you guys is show up even when it's hard. Right now, I've been really big on consistency for myself and self-discipline lately. And so today, no, I'm not feeling my 100% best. I'm still choosing to show up. And I actually feel better showing up than I would feel if I was to not do anything at all. And so I'm showing up for you guys because every Thursday at 5 p.m., these episodes drop, and I expect you guys to be in the likes, the shares, the comments, and the subscriptions because more people are viewing than those that are subscribing. So fix that, please. Thank you. Mwah. Anyway, back to the intro. Welcome to Faith Helps Podcast, and I am your host, Diamond Booth. And if this is your first time rocking with me, what's up? Join the fam. And if this is not your first time, thank you for returning. Thank you for continuing to show your support. Thank you for the guys that have been DMing me and giving me feedback about some of the things that stood out to you guys in past episodes. And I'm just really grateful for that. At the end of the day, the reason I keep showing up is because I want this podcast to be not just another podcast that you listen to. I don't want it to just be something that you use as background noise or something that you listen to just to say, hey, I support it. No, I want it to be something that's actually adding gems to your life or some fruitfulness to your life or adding to you in some capacity. Because otherwise, if I'm not doing that, there's no point in listening to it, right? And I also recognize not everything is for everyone. So there may be some episodes that resonate with you more than other episodes, and it's cool. Whatever floats your boat. Cool? All right. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and y'all going to have to pray with me and be with me and rock with me today because my words are not wording and my focus is there, like the energy is there, but it's like it's kind of like that. But we're gonna keep it moving. And I think that's also something that I've been sitting with is knowing the difference between, is this something that I need to stop and take care of myself, or is this a moment when it is okay for me to kind of push through, and knowing for yourself, because that threshold is going to be different. That limit is going to be different for each person. Some of us, we know yeah, I may have a cough and a sore throat and I can still go and I'll be fine. Some people, they're like, I'm in pain. I'm not going to show up and give my 100%. And you need to prioritize taking care of yourself in that moment. Get you some ginger tea, whatever you need to do. Rest, sleep. For some people, it's exercise. Hence why, for me, I will be going to work out after this. But nevertheless, the show must go on. So bear with me as I might stumble over my words, as I might have brain farts, as I might stare off into the distance and forget where I am in the conversation. Just pray for me, all right? Anyway, moving on. So I hopped on today, and today's episode is about emotions because I keep hearing this statement that has been irritating me a little bit, giving me a little bit of twitch. And I'm going to go ahead and say it. The statement is, God doesn't care about your feelings. I don't agree with that. And it's not just because I'm a therapist. So some of you who have been in therapy before are probably triggered by seeing this little pillow that I have right now. If you're not familiar with this pillow, it's called a emotion wheel, and you can Google it and go to images and it'll pop up, and so you can see it much better. But this is my emotion wheel that I give to my clients if necessary. um, and it has a lot of stuff on it right now because it's just shedding. Anyway, um, I give it to my clients so that when they're kind of struck, the purpose of emotion wheel is to help you find the words for what you're feeling. And it can also be used and tweaked in different ways in therapy. For myself, if I notice that a client constantly keeps just saying, I'm good, I'm fine, I'm mad, that's messed up, or like this limited vocabulary of what they feel, I'll give them this pillow and I'll say, as you look at that pillow, is there any word that's standing out to you? And they look at it and they see the word worthless. Like, I feel like I'm worthless. And then we are able to have a deeper conversation of where did that worthlessness come from? What messages did you receive as a young child or in your relationships that spoke to your worth or lack thereof? And then we can build upon that and explore that more and make the connections to where they are now, what they're coming into therapy for at that time. So like that's one way of using it. It can also be helpful when I also recommend it for clients with their couples. If you're trying to express to your partner why you're upset about something, using the emotion wheel can be helpful. Instead of just saying, you did this because you da 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 da, instead saying, I feel rejected when you XYZ, or the statements that you said yesterday made me feel I don't know, let's say, what's another word on here, made me feel critical. So it has like a lot of different words that you can use, and that's why I like it. Some people are like, "Oh, that's childish," but I've had 40-year-old men sit in my sessions and they need this will, and I pass it to them because they can't get beyond "I'm okay," or they can't give me a statement beyond "I don't know how that makes me feel," or they just say it makes me mad. Yeah, it makes you mad, but let's go a little deeper, because there's always more under just the mad or the anger. And typically once you get under it, it's an insecurity that it triggered, or a message that it sent you about your worth or your value, or feeling invalidated or sad, or it was hurtful. And sometimes being able to see the word is easier than trying to come up with it. So that's what emotion wheel is. Needless to say, I am a huge supporter of being mindful of your emotions, because I feel like if you don't know what your emotions are, that's how they run your life. And it's really important to be mindful of what am I feeling, and once I identify how I'm feeling, what do I want to do about it? How do I want to respond to that so that I can have the best possible outcome, or so I can process it so it's not just sitting there and building up. If you don't address your emotions, if you're not giving yourself an outlet for your emotions, they ultimately manifest into something else, whether it's what they manifest in your physical body, because that is the power of emotions. If you're constantly suppressing them and then you're noticing you have headaches or you're having chest pains, a lot of times that's from bottling up emotions and never expressing them or letting them out or verbalizing them. Something only has power so as long as you are keeping silent about it. The moment you give what you're feeling words and you state it, it loses its power. So my encouragement to you is that you start giving words to what you're feeling and not just suppressing it. So needless to say, your emotions are important. Now, to connect it back to the statement that I started this whole conversation about, I've been hearing a lot of people in general, in social media spaces, in my personal spaces, say God doesn't care about your feelings or God doesn't care about your emotions. And I disagree with that. First off, I'm going to start with number one, God gave us the experience and the ability to be able to have emotions and feel things. He gave us the ability to be able to feel happy, joyful, sad, distraught, frustrated, insecure. Well, though he gave us the ability to feel these emotions. We can go a little bit more in depth with saying like what emotions are from the enemy or what emotions are from ourselves or what emotions are from people. I'm not going into all that. But the point is, God gave us the ability to feel emotions. And we see Jesus feeling emotions throughout the Bible. The most prominent one that people tend to quote is Jesus wept. Well, if you're weeping, if you're crying, you're feeling an emotion, whether it's sadness or disappointment or grief in that instance, or even fear, which was also something that Jesus verbalized and allowed us to see his humanity. The difference is the control. Is how much of your emotions control you, how much control you give to them, right? Because sometimes our emotions can lead us to do some things that are not godly. And I think that's why a lot of people say, I think that's one of the reasons people say, oh, God doesn't care about your emotions, is because they're thinking like, well, if you're too focused on your emotions, then you will act on them. And that's not always true. And that's also not always a bad thing. I think another reason why people tend to make that statement is because they think that, I think what they're trying to get at with that statement is when God is instructing you to do something, I think what they're trying to say is God wants you to obey, right? And I think there's another way to say the whole statement and get both of those points across. While God does care about your emotions, this would be my reframe of it, is God does care about your emotions and he does not accept them as an excuse. Let's break that down a little bit. If I am angry and because I'm angry, I decide to go punch the person walking past me in the face, I can't then say, I punched them because I'm angry and so all is right. I'm in the right. No, I'm not in the right. And in that instance, God is not looking at it and saying, oh, okay, yeah, because you were angry, you punched them in the face. That's cool. And if we even look at the Bible, God tells us that we can be angry and not sin. And that's the piece that people miss with our emotions, is they focus on like, oh, we like kind of one up the rules or the encouragement that God gives us. God encourages not to be angry so that God encourages to allow ourselves to be angry but not sin. And people say, well, let's just not be angry at all. And that's not realistic. As long as you're living on this earth and you're dealing with these people in this world and these situations and these health conditions, there are going to be moments when you become angry. And so it's impossible to say, I'm just not going to feel it at all. The more important piece is I can feel it and I must be thoughtful, wise, and mindful of what I do with that emotion or what I do with that feeling. I can have that same feeling of anger, and instead of going to punch somebody in the face, I could go to the gym and put on the weighted gloves and, go a few rounds, right? I do a couple push-ups. I can go for a walk. I can paint the anger that I feel. There are so many other options, but it comes down to what are you going to choose to do with the emotion, right? So I felt like that was something to just acknowledge, because I think sometimes we send the wrong message to people who are so new to Christianity or so new or early in their relationship with God, and they hear this message of, oh, God doesn't care about my feelings. And so I feel like we need to be very careful about how we're saying certain things and how we're delivering certain messages. While it may be good intentions to try and encourage people to not allow themselves to be ruled by their emotions, I think we do a disservice and we risk causing harm when we tell people that God doesn't care about your emotions. He does care about them. He does care how you feel. He wouldn't have came down to earth to live a human life and experience the things that we've gone through if he didn't care about what we go through. And it says that we have not a high priest who has not been touched with the afflictions and the feelings that we have. And so God wouldn't have done all that if he didn't care, if he didn't want us to be able to feel cared for and validated and reassured. And he also wouldn't have laced the Bible with so many verses that speak to these different emotions that we feel, whether it's in need of reassurance, whether it's validating grief and the loss, or giving hope, or celebrating in joy, or validating anger. And all of these things wouldn't be in the Bible if God didn't care about it. The question becomes, what are you doing with the emotion? And I think that's where some people get stuck, and that's when they find themselves in trouble, is they haven't learned how to manage their emotions. I'm going to be the first one to say, every single time, if you're learning how to manage your emotions, try therapy. But I know not everybody is big on therapy. I think it can be helpful. And of course, I recognize I'm a little bit biased, but you have to learn whatever avenue you want to take. How am I going to, one, increase my awareness of how my emotions impact me and the people around me and how I function? And how do I want them to be managed? For example, you have to want for yourself to stop being the person that goes 0 to 100, right? And the reason I say that is because I was working with someone in particular who, she came in because she really wanted to work on, she stated that she really wanted to work on her anger. And so I was like, okay, cool. Got that. But as we started working together, she realized that a part of her liked how she was when she was angry. She liked being known as that 0 to 100 person. She liked being known as that, like, don't cross me or you're gonna get the 1-2 type person. She idolized that in a sense. And so the work became, we first got to address the fact that there is this part of you that likes that and still wants that version of you. Because as long as you're still wanting and longing for that, your work towards steering away from that and finding other avenues and alternatives and outlets for letting out your anger or your frustrations or your stress, that's not going to work until you deal with the desire and acknowledge that desire. So the first part is that we have to acknowledge, how do I want to ideally be managing my emotions? What is that version of myself that I want to see at the end of this work, or at the end of these self-reflections that I'm doing? I'm big on visualizing things. Maybe it's because I'm a visual learner and I'm a visual person, but I'm really big on visualizing where is it that you want to be, the version of yourself that you're wanting to see come into fruition. And then you make your plan. Because if you don't have an idea of what you want to see for yourself, you can't work towards that, because you're just throwing darts in the dark. So you need to know, what is it that I'm focusing on? What is it that I'm working towards? Okay, maybe that vision of yourself is that you want to see yourself become the version of yourself who can become angry and take deep breaths and walk away from a situation without physically retaliating. All right, that's a clear visual representation of what you want to see happen. How do we get to that as the next step? Maybe that looks like therapy for you. Maybe it looks like incorporating exercise more into your daily routine. Maybe it looks like practicing stepping away. Maybe you don't even know what it would look like or feel like to step away from someone when they upset you. And so you need to start exposing yourself and practicing those moments. And even if it's small moments of something that slightly irritates you, but didn't take you to that 100 point, step away, just so you can start building this mindset slowly, but consistently, of let's walk away. or let me take a step back, let me take these deep breaths, or let me write about what I'm feeling. Maybe the version of yourself that you want to see to come into fruition is someone who, when you're feeling low motivation and insecurity, you don't lean into that, but instead you challenge it. So maybe it will look like for you writing down some positive affirmations and saying them every morning or saying them every night, but being consistent. Sometimes people try things one time and they're like, oh, it didn't work. The first time you try anything, one, it's a new experience. So it's not always going to work the first time. You allow it to take effect the more consistent you are with it. And also giving yourself those moments to actually give things a try, because sometimes, a lot of times when I recommend, like for example, positive affirmations, inevitably I always get the first response of like a giggle or a laugh, or someone says, oh, like in the movies when they write things on the mirror about themselves, like I am beautiful and stuff. I'm like, yeah, that's actually exactly what I'm talking about. Like, it doesn't have to look like it does in the movies, but you should be saying something positive and speaking life. We were talking about speaking life versus speaking death. You should be speaking life over yourself, and over those attributes that you want to see come into fruition for yourself on a daily basis. If you're saying to yourself every day, oh, I'm so lazy, I'm so lazy, you start speaking that into existence. Life and death are in the power of the tongue. So what are you going to start speaking into life? You need to start speaking life over the version of yourself that you want to see show up in this world. Do you want to see the version of yourself that completes tasks and is on top of things and isn't easily swayed by the reactions or reactivity of other people? Or do you want to see the version of yourself that continues to go 0 to 100 on people? You have to decide what version you want to see. Be honest with yourself, because maybe, yeah, you are still in a place where a part of you has a liking to what the reaction you get from people, or that title that you've been given as the 0 to 100 person, or another one that I've heard before is the sad Susan complex. Sometimes we take on these identities that people attribute to us and we don't know how to separate from them and reintroduce yourself. There have been many times I had to reintroduce myself to my group of friends, or reintroduce myself as a, like in my relationships, because I had to recognize, like, oh, okay, this is a narrative that I've been on, and this is a narrative that people know me for, but I don't want to be known as that. That isn't the identity that I want to hold. Being transparent, this is something that you guys might remember coming up in my conversation with Shatima in the What the Friend episode. But I was historically known in my doctoral program, like amongst my cohort, as that friend who typically I wasn't going to speak up, or typically I was the shy, the reserved one, depending on the setting. But ultimately, as far as like speaking up or getting things done that I needed, I typically wasn't that person. Someone else typically spoke up for me. And some of that I realized was from my childhood. I always had someone else speak up for me. So I never really learned how to start tapping into my own voice and the power of my own voice. And I would remember and recall times when I would try to, assert a boundary or assert myself. And because I sound so young, or I sound so young and look so young, people laugh in my face and they move on. And so I think Shatima had gave the example of, there was this time we went to some store and I needed to use the bathroom, and I asked the guy if I could have the key to the bathroom, and he like kind of dismissed me and had me waiting for like 20 minutes. And she was like, yo, what's going on with the, like, why are you still waiting? She goes up, says something, excuse me, she's been a customer here multiple times and she's asking to use the bathroom and you're making her wait as if she isn't a paying customer. Something that I could have said but was feeling too timid to say, because I had to learn how to get more comfortable with confrontation and assertiveness. And then like that, oh, I'm so sorry, gives key, and I'm able to go. But that had to be a pattern that I had to recognize and want to break. Because a part of me, if I'm honest, liked always having someone else speak up for me, because I didn't need to do it. I could avoid the conflict, I could avoid the confrontation, I could avoid the discomfort. And then I started realizing I'm not, one, I don't want to always need someone else to speak up for me. And two, there are going to be examples and instances in my life where someone isn't always going to be the one to speak up. I need to find my own voice, and I need to be able to be assertive. And I have to get comfortable with someone being not so happy about something that I say, or feeling offended, and me still asserting my boundary or my need, and not just allowing people to walk all over me. So that took me some time to kind of start practicing that and building that up and becoming more comfortable with the assertive conversations that at the time, in retrospect, I felt like, oh, I'm doing something wrong or it's mean, when in actuality it wasn't mean, it was just assertive. And I had to become more comfortable with challenging that side of me. And I was only able to do that through consistency. So I share that as inspiration and as an example of, we all have things that we struggle with. We all have challenges that we face, and we all have different titles or labels that are placed on us. We have to decide if we want to keep living in that label, and is that label, number one, is that label in alignment with who God has called you to be and who God said that you are? I had to realize that wasn't even in alignment with who God called me to be or what he says about me. And so that's number one reason to disconnect from that. And then number two is wanting it for myself. I knew the version of myself that I see in the future and that I saw coming into reality. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to be her, and I am her now. But it took a minute. It took some practice, and it took some internal work. And I encourage you to do the same internal work. What labels are on you, or what are you known for? That you need to address and confront and change, or the ones that you want to keep and keep pouring into. And recognizing that you can have your emotions, you can have your feelings, and you can be be in control over them. You can have more responsibility over them instead of just allowing your emotions to take the reins over your life. God should have the reins, right? And so when you are feeling certain emotions, taking a step back and doing whatever intervention you need to do, whether it's journaling, deep breathing, walking away, taking a breath outside, doing some grounding exercises, acknowledging where you are, writing out what you want to say before you say it. Because sometimes if you write out what you say and you read it back, you're like, ooh, that might get me fired if I say that like that. And you're able to slow down and actually deal with the situation from a less emotional standpoint and a more wise and mature and professional standpoint. Whether wise, mature, and professional in a sense of work or with your friends. Because sometimes we just say things to our friends and we don't think about how it's going to impact them or how we feel about them, because we're like, I keep it 100. Okay, but where's your grace and where's your love and what you're wanting to say? Are you still practicing speaking from a place of consideration of your feelings? Because God does care about your feelings. And so you need to know that there's a place and time for everything, and there's a way and a way not to say certain things. And your words have power to either speak life or death. So before you say that comment or before you give that 2 cents, have you asked yourself, is this going to pour into a version of my friend or my partner that I want to see come into reality, or is this going to tear them down even more? Am I building them up, or am I destroying their character and destroying their self-esteem and their sense of self? Ask yourself these questions before you just react and respond based off of what you're feeling. So, in essence, my final words to you is just to be, one, allow yourself to have your emotions, because you are allowed to have them. God does care about them. And you can take them to him. You can tell him how you're feeling. Even if there's been multiple times when God told me to do something and I was like, yo, for real though, I ain't really feeling it. Like, I'm afraid to do that. Or I feel bitter and I have some unforgiveness towards that person, so I don't want to do that. And I allow it to be a conversation. It's not just me telling God how I feel about something. It's also me sitting in silence, or me sitting with his word and allowing myself to download what he's telling me. Well, this is what I feel, but does it align with what he said? This is what I feel, or does it align with what the Bible says? Allowing myself to still have the emotion and recognize that, yeah, God does care about the feelings. He does care about the pain, or what caused the unforgiveness. And he still wants me to lean into that obedience and lean more into his love for me than I lean into how I feel. And that is the message that I want you guys to take home. Allow yourself to have the emotions. Know that God cares about them. And still prioritize not allowing your emotions to control you and to take the reins over your life, while also allowing them to not decide whether or not you're going to obey and submit yourself to what God's pushing or calling you to do. Okay? So be mindful of your emotions. Look up the emotion wheel. Google it. Practice using it. If anything, maybe you feel like you don't need it, but someone else might feel like they could benefit from it. So share it with somebody. Share this video with a loved one or a friend or whomever that you think could benefit from it. And if nothing else, guys, remember, faith helps.